Who is this important Glaswegian that you probably haven't heard of? And
who lives in a house like this? David, it's over to you.
in this episode of Astonishing Glasgow, I am finally going to tell you who David Dale was. His name has popped up in my videos about St Andrew's Square and my video about the Ramshorn Kirk. And if you've not seen those, check them out after you've watched this video. I'll leave links at the end. The story starts outside this little cottage on Charlotte Street in the East End, just up the road from Glasgow Green and the third location of the MacLennan Arch. In the latter part of the 18th century, this area was the wealthiest part of the city, and was home to many of its rich and influential citizens. One of these citizens was David Dale, who was born on the 6th of January 1739 in Stewarton in Ayrshire. He didn't start off rich. His father was a general dealer, and as a child, Dale would work as a cattle herder until his father arranged for him to become an apprentice handloom weaver in Paisley. Dale soon worked his way up to be a cloth agent in Hamilton and then in Cambuslang before he arrived in Glasgow in 1763. A short spell as a clerk to a silk agent, he opened his own business on the high street selling imported linen from France and the Netherlands. By 1777, he was aged 38 and business was good. He was a wealthy merchant with another shop in Glasgow's St Andrew's Square, a new wife in 24-year-old Anne Caroline Campbell, and a brand new fashionable villa right here on Charlotte Street. The couple lived here, a stone's throw away from his shop on St Andrew's Square for 14 years before Anne passed away. They had 9 children, but 4 of them, including their only son, were to die in infancy. From 1783 to 1785, there were plenty of changes for David Dale. In 1783, he joined with Edinburgh businessman Robert Scott Moncrieff and set up Glasgow's first branch of the Royal Bank of Scotland. This might have been influenced by his wife Anne, whose father was the bank's chief executive at the time. Within a few years, the Glasgow branch was dealing with millions of pounds worth of business. Tobacco lords moved out of tobacco and started dealing in textiles, sugar and rum, as America was no longer a British colony. This gave Dale an opportunity to build on his reputation as a man of virtue and integrity. On the formation of Glasgow Chamber of Commerce, the very first of its type in Britain, David Dale became the first director and then deputy chairman, which put him in the same circles as famous Glasgow merchants like James Oswald, John Glassford and Thomas Buchanan. These names are often mentioned when Glasgow's links to the slave trade are discussed, but David Dale was different. It is fair to say that anybody involved with the cotton industry of the 18th century will have profited from the slave workers, but David Dale was aware of the horrors of slavery. The Glasgow Society for the Abolition of the Slave Trade was set up in 1791, with our very own David Dale as the chairman. In the same year he invested in the newly formed Sierra Leone Company, which sought to establish a colony for freed slaves. In 1792, the Society, with Dale still as chairman, resolved that the traffic in the human species is founded on the greatest of injustice. So if we ever do need to change street names in the city to try and hide the shame of slavery, then I definitely propose a David Dale Street. Now we're not finished our episode yet, but before we go on, please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're feeling really generous, pop a little donation in the pot with the super thanks button to help me continue to add more stories of Astonishing Glasgow. Thank you very much. The next chapter of our David Dale story starts in 1784 when English mill owner Richard Arkwright visited Scotland. Arkwright was considered the father of the cotton industry and was persuaded by George Dempster, a very wealthy landowner and MP, to visit the site of a proposed new mill. On the visit, Arkwright was accompanied by Dempster and David Dale to the site which is now the World Heritage Site of New Lanark. The three agreed to a partnership, and building of the mills began immediately, to the same designs of Arkwright's own mills in Cromford, but by the time the spinning began in 1786, Dale was the sole owner of the mill. By the 1790s, the mill had attracted 1,400 people to live and work on the site, and it was known as a model community where industry, philanthropy and education all came together for the very first time anywhere in Britain, and possibly the world. The community was to become as famous for its social and educational provision as it was for its spinning mills. It attracted many visitors, including William and Dorothy Wordsworth and Robert Owen, who we will come back to later. Dale's treatment of his child employees came in for particular attention and praise. Up to this point, mills employed children from 6 years old to 15 years old, and many were known as pauper children, who were the poorest of society or orphans from the local homes. They would work 13 dangerous hours every day to pay only for their board, but David Dale wanted to do better. In New Lanark, pauper children would still work long hours, but they would get breaks for breakfast, lunch and dinner. They would get 2 sets of work clothes, which were laundered regularly, and a smart uniform to wear on Sundays. It still doesn't exactly sound like luxury, but it was a lot better than they could expect living on the streets, in an orphanage or even in other mills at the time. David Dale was a strong believer in education. In other mills of the time, there was usually only a Sunday school, but at New Lanark, David Dale provided school places for all his child workers. Every day of the week for children under 6 years old, and 2 hours every evening for the working children. Reading, writing, maths, sewing and religion were all on the curriculum, and at one point there were 500 children on the roll in 16 separate classes, all with trained teachers, thanks to David Dale. He really did create something special at New Lanark, which is recognised today as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 1799, his connection with New Lanark ended when he sold it to his now son-in-law Robert Owen. Remember him from earlier? Robert Owen would continue to run the mill in the spirit had been established, and he even expanded upon the educational and welfare provisions put in place by David Dale. David Dale achieved so much in his life. As well as what I've told you about in this video, he was also a Glasgow magistrate known for his compassion and leniency. He sent a ship to the United States to bring back grain to be distributed to the poor of Glasgow. He started a dye works in Dalmarnock and developed a colour that became known as Dale Red. He also served as a director of the town's hospital, which served the elderly, the mentally ill and the poor. He was a major contributor to building of the Glasgow Royal Infirmary and chaired a group that found the land and oversaw its construction. Without David Dale, the city of Glasgow, the mill workers of New Lanark and the freed slaves of the Sierra Leone Company, as well as many others, would have had a much poorer life. On the 7th of March 1806, David Dale passed away at his home in Rosebank House, Cambuslang. On the day of his funeral, thousands lined the streets, and he was buried right here in the city's Ramshorn Kirk graveyard. The Glasgow Herald's obituary read, "His ear was never shut to the cry of distress. His private charities were boundless, and every public institution which had for its objective the alleviation or prevention of human misery, in this world or the next world to come, received from him the most liberal support and encouragement." David Dale then, truly a Glaswegian that deserves to be remembered. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button. Get in touch through the comments section and have a look at my social media pages over on Facebook and Instagram. The links are below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time in Astonishing Glasgow. A wee extra thing to add, David Dale's actual house is where the brick building is now, but I wonder how many people will wait till the end and actually watch the video before correcting me. Bye now.